Sups everybody, Mr. Sups here, back with more homework for Evolution of Video Games class. Alright, so, last time we talked about PlayStation 2 and the Xbox coming out, and we just kind of stopped there. Here we're picking up right where we left off. PlayStation 2 came out, massive success, just kind of beat the Dreamcast into oblivion, and Sony completely and utterly usurped Sega's position in the console market. And then the Xbox came out. Now, the Xbox was essentially a big game console that had a stripped-down version of Windows in it and an Ethernet cord, which made it more like a PC type of thing. And while it wasn't a resounding success, like the PlayStation had like 155 million consoles sold, like the Xbox has like 25 million sold, it was still a very big success with Halo. The Halo multiplayer, it's like, it could be argued that it wasn't new or anything, because I mean we talked about GoldenEye last time, but it gave a certain amount of freedom that was very, very enjoyable. Like, you can just go into a car, get out of a car at your leisure, do whatever you want type of thing in the multiplayer. It was really cool, but that isn't what made it such a resounding success. It was the fact that Halo kind of hit when the internet was getting up there. While the Dreamcast wasn't saved by its Ethernet support, the Xbox kind of was, because not only Halo's multiplayer was popular, but Halo fail videos were one of the first sort of shared around video on the internet. Then you have people like Rooster Teeth who made their entire career off of that game, and so on and so forth. And then we go to Nintendo and the GameCube. Oh, the GameCube. I'm just going to say this right now. I love my GameCube, and a lot of people love the GameCube. It has a strong cult following, but it was a stumbling block for Nintendo, and it's very vague if they've recovered from it or not. Because the GameCube had very limited titles at launch, it had very limited capabilities beyond just playing games, unlike the PlayStation and Xbox, which could be DVD players, could be music players, more internet capabilities, and all that combined, it didn't sell all that well. It sold less than the Xbox, the newcomer, and in that generation, and for like the rest of video game history at this point, Microsoft kind of usurped Nintendo's position the same way Sony usurped Sega's. It wasn't as bad. I mean, like, PlayStation full-on ate Sega. The Xbox just got an arm, and Nintendo's been licking its wounds. In fact, they were kind of saved by the fact that there were like 110 million Game Boys out there. We didn't even go into the Nintendo handheld stuff at all during this class, presumably because it's just Nintendo's killing it. What else do you want out of history? But then we go into the next generation of consoles at this point. In 2003. Now that might kind of leave people scratching their heads because, I mean, didn't like the Xbox come out in like 2005 and like the PlayStation and Wii come out in like 06? Actually, yes, but there were rumors circulating around that Nintendo was going to revolutionize the way humans and computers interact. So for the next 2 years, they went into a massive dev cycle and created the Xbox 360 and launched that in 2005. And that was a major success. But also around the time when Microsoft was hearing rumors about Nintendo, Sony was hearing rumors about the Xbox, and they're thinking, we can't be left in the dust too if our competition's coming out with new stuff. We need a new stuff, and they get the PlayStation 3. Which, while not as big of a success, especially in the early days, as the Xbox 360, the PlayStation 3 still had a lot of success when it came out because it was very genre-oriented. Like, if you wanted to get something like a platformer, you might go to PlayStation, or if you want to get like a big JRPG or something like that, you might go to PlayStation as well. And that's what really kind of helped along the PlayStation 3. But then, the one who started all these rumors comes out with the Nintendo Wii. And the Wii did change the way humans and computers interact with the motion controls. Say what you will about them, it was a massive success. And worldwide, it's possibly the best-selling console of all time. In fact, quick aside, numbers for, like, sales of consoles and games is kind of a vague sort of area because companies don't really have to release the numbers, but there are some sites that will report one number and another number, and they might both be correct, so it's like, just saying that it was good is good enough. But then there's another thing that you might have noticed with that. The Xbox and the GameCube and the PlayStation came out in like 2000, 2001, and all those consoles came out in like 2005, 2006. That's about 4 or 5 years. And from 2006 to 2012 or even 2013, there were no new consoles. And what happened around that time? The recession of 2008. Now, I'm not an economist, but yeah, it was bad. So that's all we kind of need to know. It was a bad market. But if you look at all these numbers, the Xbox was a massive success. The PlayStation was a massive success. The Nintendo Wii was a massive success. In a recession, in economic bad times. How does that happen? Well, that's where we kind of get into the main focus of this lecture and of the discussion, which my professor called the silver lining period. And it was a period of intense artistic and cultural growth coinciding with larger socioeconomic trends between roughly 2008 and 2013. And during those times, no one was buying hardware, but they were buying software. And in those times, software sales were at a boom. And software sales booming, that's no exaggeration. Before the silver linings period, 100,000 copies? You know what? Good for you. That was really good. You're a massive success. Now it's in the tens of millions. You're a massive success. 100,000? Get out of here. You go back to the kiddie pool. And there were a lot of massive successes, and probably a lot more than in previous generations. Like, we singled out games like GTA 4, like Skyrim, and Last of Us, that were all great critical and financial successes for everyone involved. But why did this happen? Well, that's kind of where we get to another sort of core theory about this class that I really kind of didn't touch upon all that much, was the 4 pillars. And in them are kind of the way that we view history. It's through technology, social interaction, art, and business. All these together, you kind of get a decent view of what was happening at the time. Now, the first one, technology. What were the games being developed for? Consoles that everyone was very familiar with. And we kind of saw this back when we were talking about the 32X nonsense with Sega. No one wanted to develop for that because, oh, the Saturn's on the horizon. Let's develop for that. Here, there was no new console on the horizon. It was the 360, the PlayStation 3, and the Wii. And people developed for that, and they learned those consoles inside and out. And as such, the games got better. Next was the social aspect. It was a recession. People were not really all that in the best of places, sort of mentally and fiscally. Not a lot of jobs going around, so a lot of people had to spend a lot more nights in. And will you spend, say, I don't know, will you spend like $5-10 on a movie that you'll just kind of watch for a day? Or will you spend about $60 on this game that could last you for about a month or more? And then art. There was no real sort of innovations happening in terms of technology, so we kind of went back to what we knew. There was this big sort of emerging of cultural nostalgia, and we did kind of see how there was a lot of genre stuff happening in the period. Like, this is where we get a whole bunch of space operas, a whole bunch of Western games, a whole bunch of post-apocalyptic things that were really defined by this is space, this is post-apocalypse, this is Western type of games. And you can argue that there wasn't a lot of innovation in that as well, but we learned how to do it, and we learned how to do it well. Which brings us to business. The internet. Now, the internet was kind of grumbling around in the mid-90s. Here, it became what we know today. This massive thing that allows me to talk to you from thousands of miles away. And even then, the whole social, art, and business thing, just kind of sidetracking the lecture here to my own personal stuff, here's where we get to the rise of the whole internet celebrity, the YouTube stars, and all that, was during the recession, because there were a lot of people who just kind of did sort of internet stuff as a hobby, and then the recession hit. Like, 2 prime examples of this, look at Jesse Cox and Total Biscuit. You look at their biographies, it's like, oh, I like to do internet stuff as a hobby, and then the economy hit, I was sacked by my employer, So then I had a lot of time on my hands, so I experimented with more YouTube stuff, and now I have a business out of it. And now they can live by just doing internet stuff. It's cool. However, bringing it back to the lecture, this is also where piracy becomes a big issue, and that's kind of a can of worms that I'll probably do its own separate little video about, but yeah, I'm not going to be here. But kind of rushing back to the lecture angle, another thing that was happening in the world of business when it comes to games was piracy, which I have some strong feelings about, and that's probably going to be another video in and of itself, because that's a can of worms, and I don't want to get into it. But what we will get into was the launch of the Nintendo Wii U in the next class, because we ran out of time. But in the meantime, on to the discussion, where we just kind of have to pick a game that was made during the Silver Linings period and apply those 4 pillars that I was talking about to it. Was it an innovation in them? Was it a departure, an exploration? What was it? And that's why I'm playing Skyrim, which was one of those big games of the Silver Linings period. Now, I'm just going to go down the list of how Skyrim sort of exemplifies these. In terms of technology, how does Skyrim exemplify or whatever with that pillar? Well, just look at it. It's beautiful. It's really beautiful. But also remember what came out a couple years beforehand, The Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion, which doesn't look nearly as good. It looked good for the time, but not nearly as good. And the thing is, they ran on the limits set by the Xbox 360. And you can have that massive leap in terms of quality. It just goes to show you what people knew about that technology. They learned it, and they used it. They used every part. It was like a buffalo. But then there's the social aspect. While Elder Scrolls has an MMO out, the other games in the series, single player. So you think, oh, maybe it doesn't have that much of a social aspect. It does, in terms of a modding community. The Elder Scrolls series has a long history of big modding communities, very good modding communities, and Skyrim's no exception, and it has some of the best mods out there. And you see a lot of people coming together to try to make those mods. Going back to Oblivion, you can find a whole website of people teaming up to make Skyrim look like Oblivion. It's very, very impressive, actually. But then we get into art. It's pretty. Is very pretty. Now going to business. Like art, it was good. It was really good. Like 20 million plus units sold. Yeah. But if you go back and sort of look at it along with its contemporaries, open world games, yeah, they're around, like Grand Theft Auto 4 and stuff like that. Skyrim was again one of the shining, sterling examples of it, and you kind of saw a lot of people try to be more open world after Skyrim and after GTA 4 kind of went out. People trying to kind of get that formula working and stuff. And also becomes something of an anomaly when you consider that it's single player. As we said during the Silver Linings period, the internet kind of exploded and became ubiquitous around this time, and a lot of games had multiplayer standard. Now, whether you view this as a good thing or a bad thing, you know what, that's up to you. Skyrim didn't, and it was kind of an anomaly because of that. And while they did come out with The Elder Scrolls Online, which I haven't really played, so I can't really talk all that much about, but all that kind of combining, it kind of really does exemplify what was happening during the Silver Linings period. There was a lot of growth, but a lot of things just kind of stayed the same. Now, if that's a good thing or a bad thing,